Andrew, I turn over the time for you to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and also for all you guys, Andrew has been our longest board member who has supported us through all of our initiatives, even when I was out there, flaking or whatever the case may be, working 1,000 hours a week to make things happen. Andrew has been there and say, "Hey, wake up! You've got stuff to do," or "Hey, how's this going?" So it's that quiet support that really, really sets the tone of how I operated. And sometimes it was hard, but other times just knowing that someone else is there to help you and just to listen and to guide. That mentorship is just priceless. So, with that said, I'm going to stop yapping and turn over the time to Andrew.
Hi, everyone. That was far too generous an introduction. My name is Andrew Webster. Yeah, I've been happy to be a part of the AWIT board, and how that makes sense is I've had the opportunity to work with organizations globally for innovation, primarily design thinking. So when Anie says design thinking as an innovation methodology. Happy to answer more questions about that. So I've worked in over 45 countries, so delivered workshops, done training, run innovation sprints, working with over half of the world's Fortune 100. And professionally, I'm part of ExperiencePoint. So ExperiencePoint, we help organizations innovate and change, and we partner with a lot of the best business schools. So it's just given me access to learn a whole bunch. And if I can share any of what I've learned here today, I hope that would be useful for people.
I think anything is always helpful. I think it's just a matter of what's needed at the time and what you're hearing, but I think a lot of us put it into memory bank. So, with that said, thank you so much, Andrew, for that introduction. So now I say to you, um, what do you think is this is off just a
Of
generalization
course.
of design? What would you say is like the key thing in design right now? What is everyone saying? Wow, if you're not doing this, you're not successful. Wow, if you're not doing that, there's no way you could possibly be this successful.
Yeah, so we're on the cutting edge. We're even a little before the cutting edge. We're on like the precipice of the cutting edge in design. Um, for those that know design thinking, it's an approach to innovation where you put the human at the center, and so it's often called human-centered design. So instead of thinking about what technology can we create and then how do we find a need for that technology, you start with the need. So what are what are the needs in people's lives that are unarticulated, things they need that they don't even know that they need? That's a great space for innovation. So human-centered design. Right now, the big question is human-centered design as relevant, or what's the role of agentic-centered design? So for like a lot of digital pathways, many of you probably know that ChatGPT released, it's not available in all countries right now, but Chat Agent or GPT Agent, I forget, it's terrible branding anyway. But the world is now like a lot of the biggest businesses in the world have agents doing work that people were doing not that long ago. And it will become more common that even if you want a task done as an individual, these tools are becoming public domain. You can assign an agent to, you know, find out you need to go on a business trip. It will research, book your bus tickets, things like that, do all of this work for you. And so those digital pathways, we don't need to appeal to humans in how we craft them now. We, in some cases, need to, like a search engine optimization, optimize for agents. So that's what's new in design. And if you're not at least thinking about it, then you're at some risk. But the same for anyone like, and I know a lot of the AWIT community touches digital marketing. And so, SEO in a lot of organizations is now they're getting more leads through AI type searches than they are traditional SEO. It's a parallel to that. Oh, sorry, you're muted, Annie. Honey.
Yeah, thanks. You know, we do that constantly because we don't want to interrupt the speaker. So, my next question to you is just going to the very basics. If I wanted to get into design, you know, how would you, how should I proceed? And, you know, what classes do you recommend, or where should I start
Yeah,
for
I
someone who, and even if you're not a basic beginner, you know, for someone like myself, you know, we launch AWIT, and of course, I'm thinking about the whole experience. So, what would you say to someone like me who, you know, I'm not in brand design, so or
yeah.
design thinking, period. So, what would you recommend for someone like me who is looking to have the design thinking experience on AWIT?
Yeah, so one of the things, one quote I love is design is way too important to be left to designers. So whether or not someone identifies as a designer, design is a part of what we all do, and innovation is a part of what we all do. Anyone in the AWIT community is, an innovator by method of being in the community. And I know many are entrepreneurs as well. So how to understand human needs, something, a toolkit that we all need. I've dropped into chat here. For anyone listening to this afterwards, it's just www.designkit.org. There are many, many other free resources out there as well. This is from IDEO. IDEO is the organization that coined the term design thinking, and they've just put some free stuff out there, so methods you can use. And design is a contact sport, so there's stuff you can read there. I'd encourage you to do it. But for you, Ani, or for anyone else that wants to know how to get into this, is to just start. So it's the first time you try things, it might not be amazing, but that's how you get good. And the most important things to try are connecting with end users. So who are the people that you're designing for? Who are you serving? If there's any way you can access those people and learn more about them, then you can start to understand their unmet needs and create from there. So understanding those needs, the first big part. Any way you can connect with people, you can, do web research. You can ask any LLM like a ChatGPT to create a persona for you, and that's better than nothing. But connecting with people directly not only gives you a different data set and it changes your data set about what you know, but it also changes you. If you're creating experiences for people, digital experiences, if or in-person experiences, anything where people interact with technology or system or service, then oh, I just heard the recording stop. I don't know if that matters.
It didn't stop.
Okay. So anytime you're crafting experiences for people, you want to learn more about those people because you discover inevitably that there's something wrong here. There's something that's imperfect or frustrating for my user, and that's how it changes you. You like can't go to sleep at night knowing that your experience requires updating or could be better. So just leave the desk, connect with people whenever possible, and then you'll see the methods in the design kit. A lot of it is about brainstorming, coming up with creative ideas. So that's just kind of fun stuff. And the more you can involve other people with you, the better, because it is also necessarily.
You mentioned a great user experience. You know, what do you personally, as someone who's in a space, what do you personally define as a great user experience?
Yeah, so there are the obvious things like minimize friction. Um, let's make this real. So a lot of us, I know, AWID, we're in the kind of digital space, crafting digital experiences. So I'll give you a digital example in a moment, but I'll give another example from a young woman that I met through AWID in Ghana. She was an entrepreneur who she delivers meals to busy mothers during the weekday. Incredible business, like incredible flavors that she's creating. I love this business. And she's thinking about that user experience. So she's thinking about all elements of the user experience, how people order, how to make that seamless, frictionless, easy. Like she's working with busy mothers. They just don't have time for any friction in their day. And then how the food gets delivered, how the food tastes, of course. She's obsessive about that. And then the aftermath, how to make it easy for people to clean up afterwards. That's an end-to-end journey that she's considering. And if we're in a more digital space, crafting digital experiences, that could be, anything from people wayfinding on a site that you have. Um, and so just anytime there's friction, you want to remove friction. Don't give too many choices, make the number of choices easy. So that's the obvious stuff. Anything that's friction, we want to remove it. And the more you can get people that to kind of test your user experience, that will demonstrate for you where there's friction. So that's the obvious stuff. To get a little less obvious for a great user experience, I'm going to get a little bit nerdy here, AWIT community and Ani for a moment, but I hope it's helpful. There's a book called, and I'll find a link and drop it in a moment, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And Kahneman was, we all know economics. Daniel Kahneman was the first big behavioral economist. So instead of making decisions based on numbers like economists used to do, Kahneman and others discovered, humans are irrational beings and they don't make rational decisions. So how do we create experiences for those irrational people? And in terms of user experience, one of the key findings that they discovered was the peak end rule and duration neglect, meaning the last impression someone has during an experience is the most important impression. And when we think about an experience that we craft, we usually think about the engagement phase. So, if you're in a restaurant, that's the eating the meal part. But think about there's before that, there's the awareness phase, like how do you decide what restaurant you're going to go to, the entry phase, arriving at the restaurant, the exit phase, leaving the restaurant, and even the aftermath, like posting about the restaurant on social media afterwards. Most people consider that engagement phase, that time in the restaurant, but the greatest opportunity to stick in people's memory is in the exit phase. So if you're crafting a user experience, the last thing people engage with is the thing they're going to remember. It's the thing they're going to tell their friends about. And so if you have, limited resources to give or energy to give to any user experience you're crafting, the last thing they touch in your experience is the most important thing. That's in behavioral economics, that's called the remembering self. So the experiencing self kind of forgets things, and the remembering self, if you want to create a peak positive moment, the last aspect of an experience is the most important thing for repeat business, for social media impressions, and all of those metrics that matter.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, I know that as an organization, we think about, we try to say we think about everything. We've got all of our bases covered. Before, I think someone had their hand up. Okay, I don't see them.
Yes,
Um,
that's a technical issue. Sorry.
yeah, it's okay, but I think they dropped off. But before, most organizations, we think about everything. You think about the marketing, payroll, whatever the case may be, right? But what is the one thing that you think most organizations just overlook it?
So they overlook uh, like getting this thing right in their business or organization generally.
Mhm.
Whew. Yeah, that's a great one. As obvious as it sounds, like I would say a customer obsession. So the most successful organizations we work with, and I'm fortunate to work with like the Googles, the Apples of the world. Um, they are really obsessed with their customers, what matters to them. They're looking at customer data. They're connecting with customers, and then you see those. Businesses like startups that flare out pretty quickly. They have the right technology, maybe even a cool product, but they don't know how to meet a customer need or how to get it to customers. What's the saying? There's a venture capitalist that once told me, the road to hell is paved with great products and poor sales channels, meaning coming
Mm.
up with great products or cool technology isn't easy, but even if you do it, it's not good enough. You have to, who are we serving with this product, and how do we make it work for them, or service or experience? And then how do we get this thing sold? So what are our sales channels? Do we sell through partners? How do we get the revenue coming in?
There's a lot of fake and phony people out in this world, right? So how can you, you've been doing this for years. How can you tell that someone has genuinely grasped the design, the human-centered design, and
Mhm.
not just someone who's just talking?
Yeah, there are a lot of people like putting the stamp of design thinking on their LinkedIn profile or have the credentials. For me, I'm not that dogmatic. Meaning, Ani, I think if people are trying to do design well, that's more
Mhm.
important than having the perfect credentials or experience. So there's even a body of research from a woman named Jean Liedtke, the Darden School at Virginia, where, if you put in energy to get from a level of novice to intermediate design capability, it requires some work, but the world can get there, and it has a great return for your business, for your life. If you then invest even way more to move from intermediate to expert, the return on investment, the energy you have to put in, the investment you have to put in is again very high to get from intermediate to expert, but the return isn't that great. And so um, I just wanted to offer that caveat first. You don't have to consider yourself an expert in design, or if someone's not an expert, there's still probably things we could learn from them. Um, but uh, how I might qualify someone as really understanding design or not would be their kind of bank of stories. So examples of things that they've done, and do those stories include real insights about people? So um, a lot of design stories are super complex, and involve a lot of organizational change, but invariably in design, someone has learned something about a person or a group of people that was unknown to them before, and that's what triggered an innovation for them. And so when people talk about design thinking and talk about how brilliant they were behind closed doors and just thought of this great idea. That sort of innovation happens, and that's great. But I wouldn't consider that design necessarily. So the best indicator of how good a designer is might be just the amount of time they spend with their users directly.
But you mentioned culture. So I was going to ask you, what's the role of like cultural relevance in experience uh, design?
Yeah, cultural relevance. So there's two ways to ask that. There's like the incoming culture and the outgoing culture. So if I'm designing for people, or I'm part of a team that's designing for people, we're trying to learn about those people, their culture or their context matters a lot. And the more, as mentioned, like designers are learning about people so they can design for them, and that's an essential part of people's lives. So you would see very often things like crafted by one culture that the world is expected to adopt, like things, say, coming out of an America or a China that might make more sense for those markets, but don't make sense when they're sent out into the world. That's a form of bad design. So yeah, someone's culture, someone's context matters, and the more deeply we can understand that, the better. Even better, of course. There's a slogan or mantra in design, like nothing, um, nothing for us without us. I think that's what it is. But so that is, if I'm designing for elderly people, and I was lucky to be a part of a project designing, considering a home for elderly, how to keep them connected to their community. I need to understand deeply the lifestyle of that elderly population, and this happened to be a home in Asia, and so I don't understand the Asian culture, have to immerse myself there, but also I should have someone on my team that's local. I should have someone on my team that not just understands elderly people and works with them all the time, but someone that is elderly and representative of that group. So, yeah, culture matters, or you miss so much. And then so that's kind of the incoming culture who you're designing for, and then there's the outgoing. So the culture that you're a part of matters for innovating in general, design, crafting user experiences, or innovating in general. And you can't really design culture, but you can create the conditions for a certain culture to thrive. Meaning, like, sorry, everyone, you've had to hear me say so many times how important it is to connect directly with customers. So if you want a customer obsessed culture, then you also need to make it easy for people to access customers or customer data. Like, we've worked with some of the world's leading organizations, and they say, we want to be customer focused. We want to make customer based data decisions. And then people go back to their offices and they have no way of accessing a customer or customer data. That's a broken condition that disallows a certain kind of culture instead of enabling the right kind of culture. Am I answering the right question there, Ani?
Yes, you did. You actually answered the question really good. So thank you. Because culture is also a key. But as people move with the things that they're trying to create, not understanding the culture of it could actually impact it. Um, so there is the one question which we all have on our minds right now is, of course, artificial intelligence. So how does AI and the user experience play out? What tools are coming into play? And do you actually like it?
Yeah.
And do you
Yeah,
see
I
like
think it's
impacting like roles? Like how does it impact roles in the future? I know it's like 10
yeah.
questions all in one, but
Yeah.
that's what AI triggers. It's like so many questions behind it.
Yep, there's a lot there. Maybe I'll start with the optimistic. So, most of even the most basic generative AI tools out there beat humans on every creativity test. Now, the tests we have for measuring creativity aren't that good, but that tells us something. There's promise there. And I've had a lot of personal experience working with groups on, complex projects. And my experience is consistent with what nascent or new research there is around this. That is, you know, teams that work together, but also have generative AI available to them that they'll interrogate for, some more ideas or some more insights. Those teams do better than teams that work without an AI. But it's also true that teams that totally outsource their brains to an AI and expect it to do all the work, give the most meaningful problems to the AI, those teams also aren't as good. So it's a balance. We don't want to outsource our brains. You want teams collaborating as they might normally, but then when to bring in an AI. So if in design, if there are two big phases, that big phase of finding the right opportunity to work on, so understanding customer needs, problems to solve for, and then creating solutions. There's roles for design in both. So you're collecting user data, how to synthesize that data, look for meaning in that data. That's something that if you give some simple prompts, the any good generative AI can help you accelerate that work, help you ask questions you might have not have thought of before, discover things you might not have without it. And then when you're creating solutions, even during something like brainstorming, having a team coming up with ideas, building on the ideas of others is great, but periodically, if some of those people are also getting some new, fresh ideas or provocations from generative AI, that makes the process better. To design experiments, generative AI can really accelerate that. So one way to think about the generative AI, at least, and I know I've shared this with the AWIT community before, we've done some generative AI training, is everyone in the AWIT community and around the world, no one is an individual contributor anymore. Everyone's a supervisor. So if you think about the generative AI as the thing or team or person that you're supervising, anytime you wish you could outsource a bunch of work to interns, great, you can do that. So annoying work, low priority work, a lot of that you can outsource now. But what about that high stakes, super important work? Well, now at your fingertips, you have the world's greatest experts, greatest consultants, greatest professors just available to you always. Um, Ani, I might have mentioned to you, I got to do a keynote at a conference for The Economist a couple of months ago, and it was around AI. And most of the people there are treasury professionals. I'm not a treasury professional, but I could understand very quickly the concepts that they were coming to me with and that they were focused on just by, getting assigning the persona to a simple GPT and getting it to develop me. So personal development, the design process, that can all be enhanced by generative AI. And that's the optimistic part. We can even design in ways we've never thought of before. Like image generation to make ideas tangible for people is now almost instantaneous. So great, we have that opportunity. And there's a term out there. One of the LinkedIn founders wrote a book called Super Agency. So a lot of people are worried about we're losing agency to technology. But the contention is, no, you get a different kind of agency. You get a different kind of access. So it's not that people are being obscured here. People get to do more meaningful, interesting work is the very optimistic perspective. But it is also true that some work will be done by AI that wasn't before. Like a lot of coding type of work could be done by AI. That doesn't mean developers go away. They're just doing higher order strategic work. So they will be directing the AI, defining tasks for AI instead of doing the coding themselves. But that is, of course, a scary future. And I'll say what a CEO of a Fortune 500 company that I got to meet with last week told his entire business of tens of thousands of people. He said, don't worry about AI coming to take your job, but you should be very worried about the person who knows more about AI taking your job. And to know more about AI, so that's the end of his quote. And from there, just to know more about AI doesn't require a computer science degree. If you've got one, you've got a head start, but it's just to know about AI is to just use it in your work. What's the work that you're doing? And I know some of us in bigger corporations have restrictions, but where are you allowed to use AI in appropriate ways? So not releasing anything you shouldn't be putting into a public domain, and making sure that you, click all the links, verify all the data it gives to you. So your responsible use of AI, if you just practice and practice and practice, Ethan Mollick out of Wharton, one of the kind of leading researchers in this space, says in 10 hours, you can be the world's leading expert in whatever it is you do with AI. It just requires cycles, iterations, attempts.
That's so true. I know as a person that I use AI a lot. I was using it from the gate. As a person that uses, I agree. I noticed like when I was in the office, a lot of people that were against AI, they didn't understand it. They didn't care to understand it. They saw it as like, you know, like a compromise. Like, they weren't really doing their jobs per se. But in the end, before I actually left there, I had them, using some of the basics. And I agree with that, coach, just because I think that most people use AI to think. Once you get used to using AI, you're using it as a co-creator
Yeah.
versus I'm thinking for you.
Yeah.
Because it can think for you, but then it takes out what I feel like it takes out your intent, for lack of better word.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And if you've got a lot of your work is something that you can outsource to an AI, it will do for you, then I've that's a tough job you're in probably because the things where you don't need to think and AI can do it, AI should probably be doing that. Your time, your brain power is worth more than that. And you might have discovered this as well, Ani, but those people who when they say, all right, I want AI to do everything for me, they're usually disappointed or underwhelmed. It
mhm.
requires that like partnership. I know that's an anthropomorphic, weird term for it, but it
No,
requires that
true.
partnership with the AI. If you're just expecting it to do everything for you, you can
Yeah.
probably expect bad results also.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It is a partnership because whenever anything that I look to create, I already know. So when I'm checking it and then sometimes AI will just throw in, we all know AI has mistakes.
Yeah.
You will find that out when you're actually using it, to where the AI gets lazy and doesn't want to do what you're asking it to do, or
Yeah.
it acts like,
AI is conserving resources, right?
yeah,
So it
it,
doesn't want to do the most work all the time.
it doesn't. And it trips me out. Like most people think, oh, just put it in there. No, when it doesn't feel like doing the work, it starts like going sideways. And I'm literally like, oh, you're bugging.
Yeah.
Answer my question. And then I make it repeat it like a child. So once you like, but this is coming from my using it. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that.
And and Lisa in the chat put this that is true sometimes on AI. Like the term is it hallucinates. Um, and even Lisa, that you notice that, Ani, that you notice that is a marker that you're using it right. If you don't notice the hallucinations, that's the problem. That's the lazy. That's when the human gets lazy. So we like to think about the golden always and the golden never. The
Hmm.
golden always is always verify links, verify data. Like there was a report that got released by a prominent government figure that to the American public that included references to studies that never happened. And that's
Right.
that's what hallucination can look like. So we want to verify everything, even if it includes links. You need to check those links. Sometimes it just makes up links that go nowhere. And so it requires a bit of rigor there. That's the golden always, and then the golden never. Never give it like data that should be private. I know I use image a lot, so would take a picture of something. Like even my bicycle broke, I could take a picture of the bike and it told me how to fix it. Or you can take a picture of the contents of your fridge and it will tell you what food to make. But I've got a picture of my nephew on my fridge. I've got a guardrailed GPT access. Um, but if I didn't, if I was using a public GPT, I took a picture and accidentally included my nephew in there, then his image is out
Ever.
and available for use. So really being careful about what it gives you that you use and what you use, what you give it to use is important for responsible use.
Right. And since we're on the topic of AI, since everyone seems to have like different experiences, Vanessa, you're absolutely right. It can't tell you, it doesn't know how to respond. Because sometimes I'll be like, oh, you just making this up. Like I'm there
Mhm.
talking to it like it's a human, like you just made this up. Where'd you get this from? And then it's like, oops, you're right. Let me source the information. Then it changes it for you. I think that some of us are caught up in the fact that it is really smart, but ultimately you need to be the smarter.
Yep.
Because yes, it's learning, but that's just it. It's learning, and it's learning from you and what you're asking it to learn. So, and if you give it good data, it can respond. But even sometimes, though, I did notice that when I did actually give it like good data, good information, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah. You need to check every like formula, all the math needs to be, uh, it's,
Right.
the newer models, one of the newer models are getting much better at like simulated reasoning, but one of the things they're unfortunately getting better at is sycophantism, meaning these models prioritize giving people the answer they think they would like to hear more than the right answer. And like as a lot of people will do as well, it's trained by human behavior. And
Yeah,
so that's if we're aware of some of these quirks, then we can look out for them. But no, these models want to satisfy you, which for many people, it's what's the answer this person, like the predictive engine thinks this person would want to hear, can
hmm,
take priority over correctness. And you mentioned sometimes you've got to give it a different kind of instruction.
yeah,
As weird as this is, they've also been shown to react to emotional appeals. So
yeah,
they're trying to conserve energy, but if you say something like,
yeah,
or enter something like, oh, this is really important for my career, it
yeah,
will invest more resources. That's
yeah.
weird, but that's the way that it works.
No, I agree. You guys could jump in on this conversation. You don't have to type. If you feel like typing, that's your business. And I know that you might be at work, so I get it too. But you're not obligated to type. You could just jump into this conversation whenever you want. These sessions are going to be like that. Just jump in. I agree with you with the AI. Here's the other thing I noticed, right? As you mentioned, when you're going to use it, it doesn't tell you number one, that it doesn't know. Number two, as Vanessa mentioned, I do check every single thing by asking it for a link to where it got this information from. So, because I noticed that nine times, well, I'll say if it's basic information, nine times out of 10, it gets it right. But if it's something that is a little bit more beyond just a surface answer, oh, it's going to make that up. It'll make up an answer. You're like, you want what? Oh, okay, no problem. And be like, where'd you get this response from? You go and you check it out, you go read it, and it's totally opposite. Be like, wait, did you read this or you just, you're literally, yes. It is funny. You're training someone who is working for you, but just at an accelerated pace. But the irony of this is that it won't tell you when it messes up. It also will give you an answer just to make you happy. And like you said, whenever I notice I go in there and I'm typing something in to where I'm like, what do you think about this? When I don't ask it to do anything, it goes and does whatever the hell it wants to do. It gives me like a whole spread table with this. I mean, I didn't even ask you for all this. And I tell it literally, I didn't even ask you for all this, but thank you. So it's making me think that number one, it can be lazy. Number two, it picks and chooses when it wants to do things. And
Mhm.
then lastly, I believe that if it thinks the information is what you need, it's not, even if you're like, no, this doesn't make sense because of that. I feel like sometimes the logic you're arguing doesn't always make sense and it won't go against its own logic. But you won't
Yeah.
know these things unless you're actually, when you work with AI, you're going to learn all these nuances.
Yeah, and like you said, and then it just requires cycles, so you become aware of these quirks. They are kind of self-correcting systems, so a lot of these things get better. Some things are getting a little bit worse, but like a lot of these things get better as you use them or as they get more use globally. But even the like Vanessa, I appreciate your prompt to ask for links and resources. um, like deep research from ChatGPT, it's expensive to use, but that's one where you can be very precise about the sources you want it to go to. And so it's only drawing from, reputable journals and stuff like that because, yeah, we've gone on at length about some of these risks, but in general, like AI can really augment the work that we're doing instead of just outsourcing work to AI. That's good, and you can get some efficiency there, but augmenting our work, doing really new and interesting stuff we wouldn't have been able to without these tools. I think that's where, for a lot of us, we would be able to like craft a niche and, um, develop a future for ourselves that other people just aren't thinking of.
Hmm. I agree. And, Vanessa's point is like she said, my prompts, I give it a persona so it has to think and it also give my rules. I just don't just prompt because I know what it will give me. You're absolutely right. I created folders in ChatGPT. This is a paid version. I created folders in ChatGPT, and within the folder, if it's a repeat subject, I went in and I actually added all the information of what that subject is. even with all that, it'll still forget. But for the most part, when something is happening, I just ask it to go back and reference what this file folder is. And then from there, we proceed. But otherwise, yeah, to your point, those that know AI, it took me, how long did it take me to learn this? I would say about maybe 3, 4 months. And as the upgrades kept coming in, I was adding in more things to it. So I'm always constantly tweaking it. That's me. Imagine someone else who's not used to it,
Yeah.
the learning curve.
There's a learning curve there. I'd be willing to bet, like, that you spun your wheels a little bit, but I'd be willing to bet that in those few months, it's not just investing in an education, it's doing work with you as well along the way. So you are getting a return during the journey, not just at the end. And that's an interesting thing about AI as well, is here everyone here is a part of the AWIT community, so close to technology, or getting closer in some way. With almost every technology historically, ranging, like, going back to simple tools to other, as technology becomes more sophisticated, the person using the technology needs to become more sophisticated and specialized. Like, I don't know if there are any developers among us, but yeah, you're needing to learn more languages, learn about new technologies. The opposite is true with AI. Unlike almost any other technology before it, as AI becomes more sophisticated, the user can become, like, more stupid. You don't,
Okay.
you, it's becoming easier to use a more sophisticated tool. Like, you're just really asking for what you want. Or some of those really advanced things that you're doing with folders, or Vanessa making sure to be careful about the personas. You'll notice a lot of the LLMs now, they're asking you for the personas. They're doing an assessment when you ask for something, and so it's getting easier and easier to use these things. It's kind of it's exciting, but there isn't really a precedent where we can say, oh, like this other. Um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
getting easier. Yeah.
No, no, I think it's exciting. I think, technology is always exciting, but I think the learning curve is always tricky because it always feels so foreign. When you start something new or when you're learning something new, it all looks so, so foreign and you're navigating the space. But I think having a healthy, curious mind is what keeps you going. So,
Yeah. Could I make one quick note on that, or are we done?
oh,
Sorry.
no.
I was speaking to a person, like, they're a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology for one of the firms that provides one of the world's great LLMs. And when they sell it into a business who gets a whole bunch of licenses, often the person buying it will come back and say, hey, now I see all these people are generating cat videos or images of dogs smoking cigars, like nonsense that doesn't help with their work, is what they see a huge uptick in. And this expert says, yes, you should expect to see that meaningless stuff happen first, because that's how people get comfortable with it. You
Mhm.
start with the fun stuff, and then you get tired of the fun stuff first. So there's this adoption curve where people are generating, useless images, just playing around, having it tell them jokes, stuff like that. But there's a very predictable end to that curve. And after people are, have played with it and doing this fun stuff, then there's a predictable next wave that is, okay, they've developed comfort with the tool. Now they can start using it for their most meaningful tasks. So curiosity, uh, I would encourage people based on that to, yeah, just start having fun with it. Use it in your personal life as much as possible. And then you develop a familiarity with what these tools can do, and it becomes obvious application to your professional life.
This is amazing, amazing, amazing. So, it's so funny for I know some of us at work, so don't feel bad. Even though I'm saying these things, it's not intended for you because I know you're just listening. But for those of us that are not at work and we have the opportunity to speak, what makes you shy about speaking in front of others? Try to come out of your comfort zone as much as you can, especially in places that don't have, like, what we would consider a lot of people. What helps you with that, I find, is just turning on the mic and just speaking. Don't worry about anything. Don't get nervous. So that's what will help you to propel forward because this is almost like this is the free space, but when you're in places where you're working, speaking up is great. And if you could start to do it in the places that you're most comfortable with, you'll definitely do it in the places where it's needed, whether it's your job or, focus on your career or any other space that requires your participation. So, Andrew, I just want to thank you once again for joining us and, making today's session super spectacular in the sense of like learning about design, talking about AI, which is one of my favorite subjects. But otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a great guest, and you're no longer a guest, and we're not going to call you a guest anymore. Thank you for being part of the community and supporting the community. Everyone else, thank you for joining us. I look forward to next week's
Yeah, doing this again, would love to have questions from people, like where you're feeling stuck or where you're curious, and be as useful as possible.
session. I agree. So, looking forward to it. See you all next week. Otherwise, everyone have a wonderful day.